Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. Welcome to 2024. We have an incredible guest. It's not his first rodeo, whether we're talking the universe, planet Earth, or the show. He was episode 7 in 2023. Check that one out. He shared a lot with us. Even some of his friends, close colleagues went back and watched it twice. You should too. He's super learned. Let's use a word I haven't used in a decade plus. He's been around the block. He's got a lot of experience. He's also been on maybe 3 mind, body, spirit panels. So please check that out as well. This is Paul Sugar in Scottsdale, Arizona. I've got a lot to cover for his background. So first, Paul, welcome back on the show.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, I'm honored to have you on, and I'm honored every time I get a chance to just sit and chat with you. You are Mr. Steady Eddie. You've been around the block. You've got a tremendous background. I'll do the best I can to try to just touch upon some of it. Please jump in at any point. But you started off in life with an inherent fear of death that was pervading every aspect of your life. You were also a super empath, picking up on others' situations, whether it was health or emotional states or their thinking and so on. You didn't understand boundaries in a way, and you did need to learn how that worked, and that did happen later in life. As a result, you were exposed to things like Transcendental Meditation, yoga, the Kaballah. You paid close attention to Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, meditation, and mindfulness later. You also did have a near-death experience. You went to Syracuse. You actually were on the campus, or my parents were on the campus at the same time you were at Syracuse. Both my parents went to Syracuse. Both are passed over. You've been on stage. Let's jump way ahead. You've been on stage with Deepak Chopra. You've taught at Omega Institute. Almost 50 years or so of meditation teachings and mindfulness teachings for people. In the public school systems of 48 or so states in America, your teachings are there helping kids take a time out from up here, take a breath, and get back into their body. And that's a really big theme with you, is half of what we know for difficulties could probably be lessened, or you could ride things out smoother if you would learn to get into your body and be more enjoy more inner calm. I do need to mention, though, remote viewing. I mean, you are super talented. You are psychic, or whichever way you want to describe your talents, but you actually were in the Stargate program briefly before everybody knew it was a CIA thing, but that's not the point here. It was a university thing at the time. You currently have your Scottsdale Institute, Scottsdale, Arizona. That's all about helping people with meditation, mindfulness, and so on. Stressbeaters.com. That's www.stressbeaters, BEATERS, like beating eggs for a recipe, stressbeaters.com. Again, if it's MBSR, you're highly certified. John Kabat-Zinn, you love him. You learned a lot from that direction. What could you tell us, Paul, about how you describe what you do for folks? You've been doing it for a long time. You're super knowledgeable. And I have to add, I've spent the most amount of time with anybody out there. It's been with you. So I've never met anybody who just with barely a blink of an eye, with total gratitude and a great sense of humor and a great smile when you share it, you say, got it? What's next? There's a lot of people who blow up after like one session. It can be hard for them to come back, or even the concept of meeting angels or listening to the universe or getting answers or getting hugs, or all the stuff that the psychic awareness consciousness community, Buddhism, and all the rest combined, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, raising awareness, consciousness expansion. It can be hard for people to even allow for a bigger world than we know than when we're up here. So how do we tackle this topic of spirituality? We're all on a unique life path right now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about something? It could be your background, what you do for folks today, or just how do you look at this human experience we're all trying to have?
Yeah, so the sum total of all the experiences that I've had in this life point me toward teaching people, number one, that they're not necessarily connected to their bodies. And number two, giving them a means whereby they can connect to their bodies. It's a big deal. I could probably go on for about a week and a half straight talking about how I reached that very simple conclusion. Um, but so then to answer your question directly, I teach people the importance of being in their body, how that works biologically, how it works spiritually, so forth and so on. Um, it's easy to relate to this on a lot of different levels, whether you're talking from a very secular point of view, using research in the field of stress reduction, which is what I do with the MBSR program, mindfulness-based stress reduction program, where we go into the science behind meditation and mindfulness, being present, being in your body, so forth and so on, and how when we get stuck in that fight or flight response, which is very, very common to get stuck. Most people don't even realize it, understandably so, because if you're stuck, one of the main coping mechanisms of being stuck is our ability to disconnect from the present moment. The present moment being defined really by our bodies. Our bodies really are the present moment. So if we get stuck in a stress reaction and we disconnect, it takes us right out of the present moment. It hampers the body's ability to function smoothly on every level, mentally, emotionally, physically, so forth and so on. And then, as if by magic, through the medium of attention and mindfulness meditation practice, we're able to reconnect to the body. And we see through probably over 10,000 research studies at this point, we see how dramatically, physically, mentally, and emotionally, things can reverse coming out of all of those stress-related issues that people have on those physical, mental, and emotional levels. It happens very quickly, and then just by sustaining the practice on a regular basis, not having to do tons of it, maybe 10, 20, 30 minutes a day is what I do. That's it. But as long as you have a regular practice, you can sustain staying in your body, reducing that stress reaction and reducing all of the negative effects of stress and so on and so forth. So that's the secular view. And so the non-secular view, which some people define as being the religious view, but I don't really define it as being a religious view. I define it more as being a spiritual view. And a lot of your listeners, viewers, are perhaps more tuned into that. And so through a lot of my shall we say, psychic out of the body experiences, remote viewing, things like that, near death experiences, things like that, I was able to see that spiritually, also, in addition to secularly, spiritually, we're not in our bodies either. In fact, I came to the conclusion that it's a very, very rare instance when somebody's born that the spirit is actually in the body. And that my conclusion is that one of the main processes um, of life is to create that get together between the spirit and the body. And once that spiritual essence begins to enter the body, it ignites the electrical system in the body. In yoga, I guess we would call it the chakra system, the meridians, so forth and so on. In the Kaballah, you've got the Sephiroth and the paths. But every meditative and contemplative tradition out there has an analog of the description of how when you bring the spirit into the body through the medium of attention, that it ignites that electrical energetic system in the body. And once that happens, the body is able to function on a much higher level, is able to sustain those flow states, and life begins to become a reflection of that inner um, experience that's happening when the spirit enters the body. And so you want to know how to change everything in your life. Well, of course, you've heard this before. You change everything in your life, all the events and how things are unfolding, by first changing what's going on in your body, by bringing that spiritual essence into the body, igniting the energetic system, igniting the electrical system, whatever you want to call it, and then having the ability to be in those flow states, the peak performance mode, being in the zone, whatever you want to call it, having the ability to sustain that 24/7. So that's a long answer to a short question, isn't it?
Mhm.
But that's what I do.
Oh, I love it. Okay, let's do some basics. We're going to go through a checklist. I'll also blow you some sage. I'll do this early in the show. We may do it again later. This is a patented moment in the show, a staple. If anyone's seen the show before, just let a little sage reach you wherever you are in the world. Remember, as Geronimo would say, time is a construct of the mind. And I'm cheating to look over my shoulder. Somebody on a YouTube show the other day said the past and future are human constructs. Maybe a scientist. There's really just the present moment when you're in your body, as Paul just said. Paul, is that okay to say time is a construct of the human mind?
Absolutely.
So Paul and Geronimo, Paul lives on Geronimo Trail, by the way, in Scottsdale. I'm lighting some sage. Just let it be sage smoke. Let it consider this plant medicine if you're a thinker. But if you want, let angels, the universe, the fabric of the universe is love. Let it come to you wherever you are. And if you're really gung ho, why wouldn't you ask for flowers? Let the universe, your guides, your loved ones, angels bring you flowers. Paul, what are you catching in Scottsdale, Arizona from Texas with some sage right now?
I'm starting to feel like strands of bliss, I guess is what I would call it. I never use the word strand in cooperation with bliss. So I'm using that together for the first time. Strands of bliss.
Yeah, energetic strands of bliss. I'll add just an extra word in there. You can feel that too. People can put their hand out. I don't think I've ever suggested that before to the smoke. I'm going to stub it out. Play it over again if you need help. My only rule or structure for anything is to give yourself permission to let go, which isn't really a rule. So let's make up a rule, which is again, ask angels to get you out of your head, into your body. Forget your heart. You are the heart, your whole body. Be one with all, be one with the smoke and the sage. Have fun. Just don't try. Anybody who's got a blocked nose, you can still smell it. Let angels do that extra special work. You have no limits. Paul, if I turn to you and I give you these two quotes, getting out of the comfortable path, that's what exploration is all about. NASA astronaut Story Musgrave, a great reminder for us all. And also, if there are no limits in life, maybe there are really no limits. Can you work with those two quotes and then talk to us about, again, we're all on these unique life paths, but we haven't really discovered what this is, what this is. How do we get moving and shaking and start exploring more and understanding what no limits really can mean?
Well, yeah. So the discomfort thing, that seems to be part of the human experience. Um, I've never met anybody who has said to me that they've had a life of comfort the whole time and they've never ever been uncomfortable. It just doesn't seem to happen. And then I, the other thing is when we put our feet on this particular path that you and I are on, and so many of your listeners and viewers, um, what we do is we really invoke the idea of change. Because what we're really, one of the many things that we're looking for when we come onto the path is we're looking to change because there's something about our lives that we're not happy with, that we're not comfortable with. And so whenever we invoke change and start to learn how to experience things in a different way, it inevitably causes a certain degree of discomfort. Um, but as we become more familiar, more resilient with change, that association of discomfort and change goes away. And so we're able to go through a multitude of changes without that experience of discomfort. So it's good to know that the path does smooth out a little bit down the road, and that if you do sustain a practice that's working for you, that you'll continue to experience change, but it'll be change in a positive way. And you'll be able to just go with that flow. And so change can be very comforting, actually. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable. So there is a point where we really do get beyond that experience of discomfort. And our lives, generally speaking, become much, much more comfortable. So discomfort is really in the rearview mirror. It becomes a very small percentage of what our experience is of life, and comfort and the various degrees of comfort becomes prominent and predominant in our experience, which then leads us to the concept of no limits, which you brought up, and for sure, in many, many different ways, we humans are coming to the conclusion that there truly are no limits. Um, I think this concept has been around really forever, because it's been part of the meditative and contemplative traditions for thousands and thousands of years. But now science is catching up to these meditative and contemplative traditions, and we're seeing a come together of science and spirituality. And probably one of the major um, sciences that brought us into this getting together is the study of quantum physics. And so any of you who have dabbled into the study of quantum physics gradually come to the understanding of what we really are. And it's just pure space. When we go into the molecule and into the atom, and we delve deeply into the quantum level, and we try to see what's physical there, we realize there is nothing physical. It's just empty space. And then we sort of adapt that to our own experience. And we're able to translate that into meaning, well, gosh, if that's the case, there really are no limits. And then as we go beyond quantum physics into quantum computing and AI and all of these new technologies that are just coming down the road so fast, we see that if we haven't realized already that there are no limits, we're seeing that the limits are expanding dramatically, really expanding dramatically. Eventually, you will come to the conclusion that there are no limits. But for now, if you haven't gotten there, it's fine just to see that the limits are expanding. And you'll continue to see that until you do get to the point where you reach that no limit experience.
Okay, let's back up and let's tackle this from a different perspective, because everybody out there has had a certain upbringing, a background. It could be religious, philosophical. They're just from a certain country. They could have been a transcendental meditation person who's won awards, at age 13 or in their 20s, and that was 50 years ago. And they've got a very set pattern of experience. They know what they know. They've rejected a bunch of other stuff. Maybe Buddhism's no longer for them. They did the Hinduism thing for a while, or it's this or that. What do we actually know about the universe? I'm going to just check down 5 quick random questions, but these are the ones like, do angels exist, Paul? Whether angels are beings of love from really far away, they're interdimensional, they're just angels. I like that generic label. I'll say they come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. Do angels exist, Paul?
Yes.
Can
Yes.
you get
Now,
any?
I
Yeah.
spoke about the secular and the spiritual
Yeah.
traditions. In the secular traditions, they haven't proved it yet. But in the spiritual traditions, this is old hat.
Yeah.
Of course, they exist. It's more of a question of, well, what exactly are they?
And I would just add, they don't want to cause any harm. They're unconditional love. So non-interference first, unless you invite help, connection, whatever you want to call it. How would you describe angels? Because I'll have to put a little asterisk here. You've had a lot of out of body experiences, not just like nighttime while you're asleep. Most of us would, I'd say, do nighttime classes. You're you're a daytime class guy. You've had some extraordinary experiences, not just the near-death experience in the Mustang in the rain on the way to Syracuse to finish up in the late 60s, but you've had out-of-body experiences that have been conscious, interacting with intelligent life. And so that answers the next question. Are we completely alone? Mankind is it? It's just us dominating the deer, or is the universe a really, really, really big place and we've gotten this far into examining this stuff? So you got angels to address. What's your definition of them? Plus, where are we in the whole hierarchy of the universe? I don't think there is a hierarchy personally.
Yeah, the universe is just huge. I mean, I don't know. To me, huge actually sounds bigger than infinite, although I know by definition that it's not.
Yeah.
So that's why I use the word huge. It just feels bigger than infinite. But if infinite works for you, that's fine too. Um, but there's life everywhere in multiple dimensions, not just this dimension. Once again, multiple dimensions. That's old hat. In these various traditions is old hat for me based on my personal experience. What are angels? I've come across numerous, as you call them, Mike, intelligences, beings, consciousnesses, um, during my various experiences out there, out of body, so forth and so on, extended awareness. Angels, this, I don't know, you've probably never heard anybody say this before, but maybe you have. To me, angels are a human thing. It's an earth thing. And once you leave the confines of earth and the human experience, angels transform into something else. And so that's been, I don't know if anybody's ever talked about it that way, but I've seen angels in the human experience on earth, and then I've stayed with them as I left those experiences, went into other dimensions, and they changed into other beings, other types of beings, where they weren't really wearing their angel hats anymore. They were something else altogether.
Right. And I'll add,
Um,
angels come look in all shapes, sizes, colors, all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of purposes, united by unconditional love, like light and above. How about that? Again, from really far out, from really far places. I think for anybody who needs to like examine this, then just leave it at angels and let your own organic pace discover what it will. The bottom line is love is love. It's very shiny and you get a lot of it and you get any help you need while you're here doing your thing in this life. I'd add one more thing. There's light beings who are just like whales and dolphins, angels is how I describe it. All the same team. But I keep coming back to that. Is it Green Lantern, the ring, the green outfit? There's a Marvel movie. If I got it's probably DC Comics. I blew it. I'm so sorry for people who know this answer here. But there's one where, and maybe Ryan Reynolds in the Green Lantern movie, but you see figures from around the universe all wearing the same green uniform with rings, doing their thing in their part of the galaxy. And I really like that because, as humans go, we're kind of like limited to the level of a pencil for grasping. We're just very, very limited in what we can grasp. And this is infinite. And that is such a great way to look at this is there's a lot of people wearing green uniforms. Green is good and they're here to help. And it doesn't matter what their backgrounds are. If you want to get into it, that's great. But they're here to assist when you're ready to ask and allow and receive. But Paul, I took away from your answer there. Keep going.
Oh, I mean, no, that was a very good addition to what I was talking about. Yeah, we are, as you said, we're this small, but we're also part of a this big, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and so a lot of my experience showed me how we are truly interdimensional beings, and how we do exist, you know, we, you, me, we exist on multiple levels at the same time.
Mm.
I've seen those dimensions. I've seen how we exist on those dimensions. I see how consciousness interpenetrates into those various dimensions. And I see how all of our personal consciousnesses interpenetrate into each other's personal consciousnesses. So there's that sharing, there's that interbeing that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, where we're really truly all connected to each other, not just figuratively, but literally, literally. And I love Thich Nhat Hanh's expression, his phrase of interbeing. It really does um, describe the nature of our existence.
And I'm going to go on a quick side note. I've never known exactly quite what I do, what I'm capable of. I try to leave it open. I'm seriously one knot above stall speed in some senses, but I do a great job if people will ever will allow for it and I get a chance. But along the way, I'd slip in during the 8 years I gave away the service for free. I'd slip in a question: what does Mike do for people? That's me. And the person was getting free service. They'd be talking to angels or loving guides, Mary, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, whoever, Plato, and they'd get an answer, what does Mike do, from some Native American chiefs. One time, Dull Knife said channel, or he channels, and I didn't even know what that was. But by the time I got home 17 miles later in Northwest Austin, I remotely kind of knew what channeling was. You held the space, you listened, you related something from somewhere else. And by the time I got home, I got comfortable with that concept. And so today, the dimensionality, the multidimensionality, the interdimensionality is so much more in our vocabulary than it was 10 years ago. And I'm not talking just Marvel comic book stuff. You see it though in the movies now more. You see it in the Avengers and everything else. I mean, multidimensional stuff. I'm forgetting one of my
Dr. Strange.
yeah, thank you. And it's all the multiverse, all this stuff. I just had somebody thank me for introducing and expanding their concept of the multiverse. I don't even know how to use these words, but I do know that I'm multidimensional channel for transdimensional fun, strictly love, the upside of the picture, whatever a person's going to allow for. And now I'm most comfortable with that. To that effect, I'm going to put we're breaking the mold here. We usually do this at the very end. Most people never even know the guest takes steps on air because they got to get to the end of the show. Go back and watch anybody. 99.9% of the guests do some steps with angels, guides, interdimensionality, whatever you want to call it, basic listening. Where do you think half your own intuition's coming from? Here's Thich Nhat Hanh. If you don't mind getting another follow-up on what you were just talking about and taking it forward for us all.
Well, his concept of interbeing, I think, sums up his teachings. And he's got what, maybe 50, 60 books out there. What his organization does is, well, he died recently, but what they used to do was they would record his presentations and then just make it into a book. And, it was a way of bringing income into his organization, which was great. And so I used to buy his books just as a way of supporting his organization at Plum Village over in France. But to me, that phrase interbeing sums up all of his teachings. And so if you didn't want to read 30 or 40 or 50 of Thich Nhat Hanh's books, you could just meditate on the phrase interbeing. What does it bring to you? What does it mean to you? Um, is it a way of defining what love is by describing interbeing? I mean, think about that. It's really the interpenetration of our consciousnesses with each other, which to me is the ultimate form of sharing, which to me, once again, is the ultimate experience of love. So, in fact, I think Thich Nhat Hanh actually wrote a book called Mindfulness and Love at one point, because he realized early on that this whole concept of interbeing and interdimensional experience was really the gateway into the experience of love, and all of those experiences related to love, such as gratitude and appreciation and forgiveness and empathy and kindness. Those are all really iterations of that primary love experience. And so, yeah, he was pretty cool. I enjoyed him. I enjoyed listening to him. He was a good dude. He was a
Well, you're about
good.
to get to listen to him again in just a second, but I'll try to recap in a short way, which is just one sentence here. The more you love, the more you allow love to do its thing and for you to do your thing from your body and from here, whatever this is, the heart, the more everything becomes self-evident. You don't have to try up here. Two sentences, I lied. Okay. Here's Thich Nhat Hanh. Could you get a reminder you're listening to Thich Nhat Hanh? Because in reality, and this may be hard for some and not for others, we're all more interconnected than we realize. And Thich Nhat Hanh's here with us. If anyone wants to put your hand out to the photo, feel his energy on your palm through 3 screens, an iPhone, my computer, your computer at home. And you're doing this in 2025. It doesn't matter. Give yourself permission to let go. Ask the universe angels to make it so. And ask Thich Nhat Hanh nicely to vibe you. What are you getting from Thich Nhat Hanh verbally as a reminder? Do you hear his voice loud and clear kicking in?
Oh yeah.
What do you got from him?
Well, I'm getting a thank you from him.
Aw. And close your eyes if you want. I'm not going to put the photo back up again, but whichever way, eyes open, eyes closed. I'm not looking at you to give you space. You have all the privacy in the world. Haha. You're on a show right now. What else? Can he just steer you a little more, you and him, whoop, one more direction? Because you have such a great way of encapsulating stuff and describing things for us to put it into context.
Well, he was a big fan of really keeping things simple. Um, he was the mindfulness guy, as far as I'm concerned. He was, I think, more responsible than anybody for bringing the concept of mindfulness into Western society. It's been in the East for quite some time, but I think he really brought it. And I think a lot of the mindfulness leaders here in the West will agree that Thich Nhat Hanh was pivotal, really pivotal, in bringing mindfulness into the forefront of our Western culture. Um, and so what he brought to us was the concept of simplicity and being embodied and being in the present moment. And the fact that being embodied is the definition of being in the present moment. And so I think that's probably his greatest contribution to the West. Um, and I think the West is now perhaps influencing the East more than the East is influencing the West. It used to be the other way around.
Hmm.
So he was able to accomplish a lot in his life and to really keep people focused on the simplicity of being, simplicity of being, and how connecting to that concept of embodiment, allowing the spirit to come into the body was really what enabled us to fully experience life as a spirit in a body
Hmm.
and experience that love that really connects everybody together.
Pieces every step. I still remember the dishwashing tip or stoplights, or I always just try to say car handles. You can use anything as a reminder. I don't have anything original, but this is Songyal Rinpoche used to teach his students for 35 years, remember to remember. And I didn't know he said that until a book on its own at a bookstore, no one was around, fell off. It turned to that page. It was a Tibetan book of dying. Everyone feels obligated to write their own version of that. Songyal Rinpoche had been asked to write the foreword, did. And at the end of his foreword, because it turned to this page, I had nothing to do with this. The book literally fell. It was the universe doing its job. It literally said something like, for 35 years, I've taught my students, remember to remember. So I always say, remember to remember if you can remember, when you remember to remember. You're doing the dishes and you're like thinking about the next thing you need to do, work tomorrow, what happened yesterday. You're not feeling good about something you saw in the news. And the whole concept with Thich Nhat Hanh is feel those bubbles, the touch of the sponge. You can enjoy each moment. Peace is in every step. And letting go is letting go. And good luck with that. The details, there's people who say literally to you because they're in a panic, they're crying. I'm not in my body. I'm stressed. This happened. this, the world is going down the, and there's all this stuff going on. And Paul, you've seen this all the time. Your classes, your seminars, your workshops at stressbeaters.com, you hold like periodic kind of not open houses, but chances for people to get together in like 8-week, 12-week increments, I think. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you help people unplug from the brain a little bit? It's just a little less thinking and a little more breathing, falling into the body. Can you take us through a little bit about what you've been doing for all these decades?
Yeah, well, I've taught probably every form of meditation out there. But for the last 35 years, I'd say really the only thing that I've taught is mindfulness. Um, Thich Nhat Hanh's first book was called The Miracle of Mindfulness. And I see that every day in my classes. I can, for the last 35 years in my classes, I continue to scratch my head and wonder how this all works. I mean, I know how it works, but it still amazes me that it works. And the word miracle comes to me all the time. And I see all these people who come to me so stressed out, so disconnected, so unhappy. And over maybe 2 or 3 weeks, they begin to smell the coffee and things turn around from 2 or 3 weeks of maybe decades of being stuck in fight or flight and disconnected. And I just say this is truly a miracle. So I think I know where Thich Nhat Hanh's head was when he came up with the title, The Miracle of Mindfulness, because it it does seem like a miracle because it's so simple. Um, and it just seems to work every time if somebody, is committed to just some degree to do a regular practice. It just works like a miracle. Of course, we know the science behind it. We know how it works and why it works, but it still kind of seems so miraculous because at its core it is such a simple approach, and then once you come out of all that stress and you're able to get into those flow states, and then if you want to explore some of these other approaches, you're in much better stead. And you can go much deeper in these other traditions if you're first in your body and you're first in those flow states. And then you want to experience maybe out of the body travel, Kundalini yoga, all of those different traditions that offer us experiences of different states of consciousness. If you want to start experiencing those things, and you've got a good foundation of being in your body, being present, being in that mindfulness experience, you're much better off. You'll go further. You'll have a much deeper experience with those other traditions. So mindfulness really, I think, should come first. I don't even bother teaching a lot of the other stuff that I used to teach because for the most part, I see that people are completely satisfied with what they're getting from the mindfulness experience. Just being in those flow states is enough. And then I think, at least for me, what happened was when I got into those flow states, all those other experiences began to unfold naturally. Those expansion of consciousness, out of the body, things like that. It just seemed to evolve and unfold naturally once I took that first step, got into my body, and became present.
Hmm. Okay, I'm going to put 3 angel photos up: Joy, Charlotte, and Min. And get anything you need privately, get a hug. And for people at home, you can put your hand out and do this sort of as a baseline. Feel the energy through 2 screens, ask a question silently. It'll be your voice for 1 or 2 seconds till you let go and get over it. And then you'll hear a high, peppy voice for the angel Joy, who's the emotion joy. For Charlotte, who's everybody's favorite teacher from 3rd form if you're in Canada right now, 3rd grade. If it was Mrs. Wilson, think of her as her, not the one who got you in trouble or punished you. Min, Pacific Princess, an angel is soft-spoken professor, light waves of energy and water. Paul, we can spread these out so that you get a conversational topic, another reminder on something, and you're like, right, let's talk about that. So here's Joy. Get what you can get out of it. Let me know that you're feeling her and hearing her. And anybody who wants to catch flowers, for example, catch flowers in the air. She'll bring you something you haven't smelled in a long time. Paul, are you catching any flowers or ocean?
Yeah. What are those things called? I'm seeing those flowers. Um, if the name comes to me, I'll let you know.
Okay. And what's joy remind us all about how simple it is, first of all?
Yeah, it's definitely very simple. There's total agreement there.
Okay.
Not necessarily easy,
No, it's
but
what we
simple.
allow for, what we make, and it takes a little bit of commitment to just try to focus on this once in a while. Okay. Charlotte, and if you don't mind asking her a specific question, what's the best recommendation she can give for all of us on our life paths as we move forward?
Well, what I'm getting is the word kindness. That makes up for a lot.
Kindness
Being
is
being
essential.
kindness to one another, and of course, being kind to ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, that goes, kindness counts. I think I'm
Yeah.
quoting Abe or the Abraham of old on that one. Okay, we've got Min, soft-spoken professor, water-like, light waves of energy and water, just call her Min, my guardian angel. She's a lot of fun. She's from really far out, but that's not important. What are you hearing, feeling, sensing, getting from Min?
Well, there seems to be a kindness theme today, treating each other, you know, with that kindness. I'm kind of stuck in on kindness right now.
Paul, that reminds me, Dull Knife once said about compassion. There's a million definitions of compassion. And I guess that's what this is in the really big picture. We're going to come back to this if I can remember. Maybe we can bookmark this. But learning never stops. Our expansion never stops. Our ability to love more, allow more, never stops. You just have to pay attention. But that's kind of what the ego, the thinking, does through failures or accomplishment or getting out of the body. We go around in that spinning cycle. But Dome Life once said, being kind to yourself and letting go of past failures and accomplishments in the now is compassion. And a quick public service announcement. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment on these shows. It helps the algorithm appreciate us as a show. It jacks up the exposure we get to other people. You can share this with others. We just simply, everything goes around. We get more followers and so on. To that end, we've designed our first mug. It's an angel nutrition label on one side of the mug. You know, who can have enough joy, good advice, love, and so on. You can see the nutritional values there. And then the other side, of course, as one client guest on the show said, you have to have logos on everything so people can find you. So we did just that. That's our very first product. You have two sizes, an 11 ounce on the YouTube website. You know, when you go to YouTube, you click on any program, you'll see the Spring. It's really teespring.com, but now they call it Spring. And that's one of the three options. As a YouTube creator, most of you will be doing your own shows one day if you're not already. That's one of the choices for selling t-shirts and so on. So there's the 11 ounce mug there, but go to my website if you want the giant 20 ounce mug via Printful. To that effect, Paul, and I'll add one more quote. Don Miguel Ruiz had the 4 agreements, 4 things to live by to keep it simple and keep it easy. No matter what's going on in your life, what's happening, you think happening to you, not happening for you. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Good luck with that. And don't make assumptions. Always do your best. Paul, give us the pep talk about how no matter what your unique circumstances are and what your unique potential is, getting here, living your unique life path, discovering it, how can we do a little better at paying attention to what it is to being human?
Let's see. Well, you mean besides adopting a meditation practice?
Yeah, besides, I mean,
Yeah.
something to slow down, because I guess thinking isn't as real as we think it is.
Yeah. I don't know. This weird thing comes to mind. One of the many things that I've noticed over the years about people who decide to put their foot on this path is that so many, I mean, I hate to say this, but it's true. So many of them have hit a very low point in their life. They have nowhere else to turn. And they're kind of forced to look at things that they wouldn't normally have looked at before they bottomed out. And so I'm not saying that everybody has to bottom out before they can begin to do things to realize a better life, but it seems to be a theme, you know, where people do get to a point of discomfort, extreme discomfort in some way or another, where that motivation to make life better opens up. And that motivation to make life better usually presents things like mindfulness and compassion and love and kindness to oneself and to others, and just creating new ways of being um, in life. And so I'm trying to think of people that I know whose life seemed to be great and everything was going super for them, and they decided to put their foot on their path. But I can't think of anybody like that.
I was in New York for a long time, maybe 18, well, all told, maybe 20 years, two different times. But, a little bit of Wall Street, couple of years, and then public relations since. And I was in an in-house top public relations position at a global law firm. And because of Lehman, so this had to be around 2009. I think in 2010 there were stealth layoffs. I was in the third one with 72 other people with an hour's notice. I'd already bought a home in Texas. I was living in New York at the time I was Kurt Russell, escaped from New York. I wanted to get out of New York. I had absolutely no game plan, nor could I imagine it. But with the 1 hour's notice of a layoff, I was the only one secretly doing a Toyota jump for joy, because I knew that wasn't forever and I wanted out of New York. And then a culmination of other events in like the next 6 months or so kind of popped me out of thinking briefly. And I was like, wow, this isn't how it all necessarily works. I don't know how to say it otherwise, but there was suddenly, I'm hearing a little more, I'm seeing a little more. As a good American, I grabbed a Sure Shot camera and started taking photos of, angels, Plato, one of our favorite unconditional love spirit guides. If you want to see his face, you can see the old man's face right here. I should say the learned philosopher that we all appreciate for great life advice. No hugs for him. They're sweaty. Get a fist pump tap on the shoulder. And then things unfolded. But I'm a super slow learner, although let's flip that pancake and say it a different way. My opportunity for growth is just to pay attention like the next person, and you'll get your lessons a little quicker. Everything is easier than we think it is, because it's not about thinking. It's about here somehow. With that, that was 12 years ago or something. And I'm still not right where I started, but it's an ever unfolding thing, or process of paying attention and allowing people to cross your path, to offer help where you can. And I've found not telling anybody anything is the best thing. So this show, totally ignore it, please. But listen to Paul. Paul, what are we listening to in a second? Connect with Plato if you could. He's one of our favorite figures. We've been doing this a long time. Whether you know it or not, Paul and I have had a lot of hours together. We love this stuff. What's Plato's reminder about the whole human experience for us?
By the way, what I got from Plato first thing was he doesn't mind being called an old man.
I love it. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, okay, so I see, he's okay. Just looking at that image, I'm seeing that I can expand upon what I was just talking about, because I've given a lot of thought about why is it that people have to become so uncomfortable, before they start to improve their lives. And I spent many, many years thinking about that. Why is that the case? And what can I do about it, to change that particular dynamic where people don't have to suffer so greatly before they begin to see the light. And so you probably know what I'm going to say, but I came up with teaching mindfulness in schools.
Mm.
And I figured, okay, if I can nip it at the bud, that's what I got from Plato. I heard the phrase nip it at the bud. And I said, oh, okay. And so I'm thinking, this is back in the 90s, um, thinking, how can we get to people when they're very young so that they don't have to become so miserable before they wake up and enjoy life? And I said, this needs to be taught in the schools. And so I put together a curriculum. I did a study, a research study with Arizona State University. It got published, I think, in the early 2000s, but we actually did the study, I think, in 1997, 98, where I went in for 2 years and taught mindfulness to first, second, and third graders for 2 years. It was phenomenal. And I slowly realized over those 2 years that this was the way to avoid having to go through human suffering. I mean, that's a hackneyed phrase at this point. You know, how do we avoid human suffering? Well, we teach them these tools at a very young age so that they don't have to go through all this stuff. And any stuff maybe that they have gone through at this point is not that deeply seated where it can't be plucked out and, taken care of at that early age. And so the study got published. It got worldwide attention. Since then, mindfulness is being taught in schools all over the world. I'm connected with a nonprofit organization that uses my curriculum, and it's called Inner Explorer. If you guys are curious, innerexplorer.org, and we're in front of about 2.5 million kids right now. And so we're teaching children from pre-K to 12 mindfulness. So we're continuing to get them at a very early age and to continue getting that through. And so this has really only been going on for the past 10, 15 years to a good degree. Of course, I was doing it longer, but it gradually picked up speed to the point where now it's all over the world. But intensely now, it's the point where it's in a lot of schools. And in fact, I saw an article just last week where the CDC came out and recommended mindfulness training for the schools, and not just for the kids in the schools, but for the teachers, the counselors, and the administrators. I mean, this is the CDC
And that could be
recommending.
counterproductive. People might be happier, more efficient, and get along. Everyone, because schools have
Yeah.
become police stations in a way where the stress levels are off the charts with so many different groupings of people who are at each other's, at each other.
Yeah, yeah. And so I see this time that we're living in as being a very pivotal time in many, many different ways. We could go on for hours talking about the different ways, but one is the acceptance of mindfulness in the schools, and actually having an organization like the CDC recommending it, which to me is a big, big deal.
Well, let's jump a little if we could, and this is very brief because there's the interdimensionality question, and are humans the center of the universe? The universe is flat. We're the only organism alive, that thinks or is. Not really, is my guess. Not in the slightest, actually. It's a really big universe, period. With that, there's something called UAP, UFO disclosure. I'll be having some guests on this year in 2024. Vinny Adams, Brant Levac, Alan Steinfeld was on last year. These are people who either cover these topics of, are we alone in the universe? They cover the topic of disclosure, where, people are trying to get governments and other organizations to act in a more broader, transparent fashion, and so on. So, these are important topics, but I'd like to point out, and I'd like to have you point this out so we can encapsulate it somehow. So we can know we're safe, which is what I've heard from Charlotte the angel. The blue angel just said, when I saw something, 2 balls of red light going by in our back Austin yard, standing next to someone, you kind of have a moment. They're not. This is before drones existed and stuff like that, but they're going like this. And the first question is, what the heck is that? And are we okay? And the answer was, you're safe. Just don't put your focus there too much. And the other thing I'd like to point out is, somebody said, angels, light beings, unconditional love figures are, they're not mortal. They're not limited. They're still learning from us, is something they've said, which I thought, wow. They exist in and within us and around us, which is getting to that interdimensionality thing. And that's a little bit of a mind blower. You're never going to quite grasp that. How can you cover the topic of, and I think people can get lost in, the seeking and the chasing of, objects or technologies or the gajillion organisms you'd see in the original Star Wars movie at the Cantina, 1977. And I'm only talking about the ones that are less than unconditional love, that are like mortal or finite, so to speak. How do you handle this so that it doesn't override everything else? And it seems to be a topic that's coming up more and more in the news, that's coming up more and more for us as a society and as a species. How can we encapsulate this, put a ribbon on it? And I'm going to hold up 3 figures for you. I don't know which ones I grab. Plato, Min, and Joy. If there's any parameters, advice, support to keep it simple. But how can we handle that topic that I hopefully nimbly danced around in a really long way?
Well, do you mean the UFO topic or topics
Yes.
like that?
Yes.
Well, okay, so the UFO phenomenon, I'm trying to be diplomatic here.
I tried to do the same thing if I could, because I know it can take up all your bandwidth. You could spend your whole life pushing for disclosure and all this and that. And I kind of feel like you're missing the mindfulness, the unconditional love factor, living your life more and understanding the universe already was really big before you even came in this go around.
Well, let me talk about my experience then. That might keep it simple
Yay.
because I am a simpleton.
And your mug should have said, been there, done that.
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, there we go. Heavily meditated. I like it.
So, well, let's start with my experience of, yes, I have had experiences of UAPs and beings associated with that whole field.
Not all
Many,
happy,
many,
not all happy and fun either.
no,
No.
no. Many, many years ago, I had those experiences. And it didn't take me long to realize that this is no big deal. That not only these things, but many, many more things are out there, that exist. And then I could spend my whole life chasing the next shiny thing. What brings me excitement? What can get me excited? What we have is a generation of people who are addicted to adrenaline, because they're stuck in that fight or flight mode, which pours out huge amounts of adrenaline. And after a while, everybody just gets addicted to the adrenaline, which means they're addicted to anything that can stimulate the adrenaline, which means anything that's exciting and new and shiny and flashy will give you a shot of adrenaline and, satisfy your drug addiction there. And so I realized that it's very easy to fall into that trap of chasing after all of these other things, um, and lose sight of all of the rich experiences that we can have here in this dimension on this earth, in this body, I mean, with these five senses, that can also be enhanced by the energetic, coming together of the spirit and the body. It takes the five senses and it expands them to great degrees where you can um, experience earth in the body in the present moment in its full magnificence. And so I shifted my attention. Even though I was having these experiences, I said, okay, well, that's fine. I'm just not going to chase after it. And so I just came back into my body, focused in on this life that I'm having. And I've been happy since. And I'm every once in a while, I'm a little curious as to what these other subjects are doing in the general consciousness of the world right now. It's like I try to keep abreast on what people are interested in. And so, I stay present, I stay current on the UAP, UFO stuff, just so I know what other people are thinking about. Another subject that is gaining tremendous interest is psychedelics, which is, I mean, the idea of the psychedelic thing is to use it for mental health. And there is some possibility being shown there through some pretty good research. But once again, there's also a tremendous amount of abuse that can be had in the field of psychedelics. And so I've been learning about psychedelics, not so much because I want to take them, because I don't. Um, but I like to stay current on what people are thinking about and what's drawing their attention. So I'm constantly learning, constantly, reading about things, listening to podcasts, what's current in the attention span of the people of the planet Earth. So I'm always fascinated, curious, interested about things like that. And so I gain a tremendous amount of pleasure just learning about these things and staying current with what's happening in this life, at the same time fully experiencing what's happening with me as well, and getting a lot of enjoyment out of teaching. Frankly, at this point in my life, I just teaching is number one. I just love spending time with people and teaching them the advantages and the skill set of the mindfulness practice and so forth and so on, and all the different possibilities.
Okay, now let's do a quick quiz. And by the way, people can hear about your near-death experience. It's the March 7th episode 7 of the Angels, Positivity, and Love show from 2023. But they can hear about some of your out-of-body experiences, your remote viewing, how you describe it. Also on some of the panels. You were on Mind, Body, Spirit panel number 2 with 2 other amazing guests. Mind, Body, Spirit panel number 5 and Mind, Body, Spirit panel number 8. I'll mention those guests. Ewan Brioch, the Welsh theater director, non-duality teacher, and also Dr. Leanne Whitney, whose show comes out soon or has come out here in 2024. All three of you had a lot in common. Getting back together again in April of 2024 to do another Mind, Body, Spirit panel, be it number 10 or 11 by then. Back to the business here of talking about this stuff. If you had to recommend to somebody, and this is just putting you in an impossible situation, is it a single golden breath? Is it a smile? How do we gain entry to our heart in the fastest way? Is it feeling our toes? As Eckhart Tolle says, start to feel different parts of your body. What's your best advice for someone to go full stop during the day and to appreciate and allow and drop into your heart?
I'm eliminating things as I'm thinking. I'm getting down to the core. Okay, I'm at the core. The most direct way, I think, is, and I'm sure so many people have heard this already, but fully experiencing the breath. And yeah, the breath is part of the body, and we can go into the different parts of the body and all that stuff. But there's something about the breath that unites the conscious and the unconscious. There's just something about it. And so allowing the attention to stay with that experience of the breath is the quickest way that I find into the body, which then shortly thereafter brings us into the heart and all of the different experiences that are available to us in this body.
Inspiration, that word, is it a Greek word originally? And the whole concept of your breath connecting, above and around and within.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
Audrey Hepburn hitting you up with another unconditional love angel. People can see her wink, smile, shoulder waggle, hands move. Photos we know cannot move, but we started off the show talking about no limits. So why not have a no limit here? This will defy everything you know. But since we don't do the type of knowing that precludes possibility, let's do universal knowing, allowing. Paul, has she already moved in the photo for you?
Not yet, no.
And what does she have a reminder for us all about just being and loving and being sparkly?
Okay, the definite thing that I'm getting from that right now is FUN,
I
fun.
was like, we keep it
It looked to
non-X
me
rated here.
it looked to me like she was having a lot of fun, and that's another thing that I've focused my attention on. I like to have fun, and I think fun is a natural coming to. That's just one of the things that we come to naturally as we embody ourselves in that present moment experience. It becomes fun.
So there's a certain willingness that a person has to have. I mean, there are a lot of established figures out there that can get caught up. Maybe it's the age old, the human thing of self-importance, or just getting stuck without knowing you get stuck. If you take everything too seriously, including what you do, failures, accomplishments, you do it a certain way, only on Tuesdays, you might miss the bigger picture, which is it's constantly changing. It's constantly there for you. It's constantly within and around you. How do we reconcile that with, how do I say this? The Buddhist community does it a certain way. The Hindu community does it another way. There's 4,000 of these communities, and each one's in essence pointing at the same place here. How do we reconcile all the different approaches, and how do we do a quick reminder that there's no one way? It's all ways. It's always.
Yeah. How do we reconcile it? I don't think it's something that needs really to be reconciled. I just think that it's who we are. And as we become who we are, there's that realization.
Yeah, everyone's on their path. It might be nighttime and we're holding on to the log, as the Buddha says, and we're bumping around in is it flotsam? I don't know the word. The great flood. But I think there's a Buddhist expression. Buddha said, when two logs bump, we're each holding onto our log for survival, and they bump in the middle of the night, and you notice the other person. What's the proper salutation? There isn't one. Like, just say hello and hope that you get to chat for a little bit before the flood pulls your log away and you go the other direction and bump into the next person. I slaughtered that completely. But the point of this is just take it one step at a time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, once you're on that path, it unfolds naturally. There's, you like to use the word allowing, and that's really perfect. Once you step your foot onto that path, it will unfold naturally, and you will kind of get that sense of you're allowing it to unfold, and 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 the more you allow it to unfold, the more it unfolds.
Okay, what is going on for you personally as it relates to the high school programs and so on? Are you expecting to ramp it up in 2025? You're already going full bore on this. Can you tell us a little bit more about the coursework, about maybe being more hands-on? Is there a documentary film maybe in the works at some point, or should there be? Let's put that out to the universe now. Can you, or are you thinking of, college campuses or other areas that you want to expand this out to?
Well, remembering that the program that I'm working with at Inner Explorer is not just high school, it's pre-K to 12.
Hmm.
So we start at pre-K and we have programs that are designed for age groups. And so pre-K all the way up through graduation of high school. And we are actually taking steps to expand because there's been such great demand. And so we are spinning off a for-profit arm to the nonprofit organization. We're doing what's called a B corporation, which is a new qualification of corporations that commits you to doing socially responsible work. So we're going to become a B corporation, but it will be a for-profit organization. And we have a group of investors lined up who will be injecting a few $1 million into our organization, which will allow us to hire more people. We've never really had a marketing arm, so it's all been grassroots, word of mouth kind of thing. And so in hiring more people, we'll be able to get the word out there more and grow faster. And so, I mean, you could say that 2.5 million kids is already big, but it's still not big as far as what our mission is, and that's to bring it to every school in America and worldwide as well. And so, yeah, we are taking definite steps this year to do it, and we should be doing a documentary about this. But frankly, we're balancing so many things already that the bandwidth isn't there yet to think about doing a documentary. But I think it would be in the future.
Okay, and a quick aside for folks, Paul's been on Coast to Coast AM. Was it the Jeff Mara podcast as well? Did you were
Yeah,
with?
I was with Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you've shared a lot of experiences there, also on our show, Angels, Positivity, and Love, and on the panels as well. Such great interaction again, especially on panel number 8. So please check that out. Mind, Body, Spirit panel in 2023 with Paul Sugar, Ewan Brioc, and Dr. Leanne Whitney. Paul, is there anything else you'd like to add today? A reminder on a little less thinking, a little more compassion, a little more just let everything be as they are, and focusing on kindness and love. What's your shtick? What's your reminder for us all?
My reminder is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And what I mean by that is there is nothing about the human experience that cannot be transformed. And so I'm talking about the mind, the thinking, the heart, the physicality, all of our emotions, everything. Sometimes different parts of those things are kind of discarded as being unnecessary or not serving us in the way that they can be served. My experience is that all of those different parts of who we are can be transformed into serving us in a very positive way.
So is another way to say it also like just transmuting certain flows that are a little less than love into more love?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, with transmuting, that's, the language of the old alchemists.
Exactly. And speaking of which, I've got some sage for you one more time, just because no one, can get enough smoke where they're at. Get smoked out. Catch the sage if you'll allow for it. Let it wash over you. Ask if you've been doing a lot of gardening and your right arm is sore. Ask for the sage smoke to go there. Ask for it to be angel light. Whatever you're willing, you use your lingo. That's the only thing that matters. Maybe keep the lingo wider and wider and more open as you go through the days, weeks, months, years. It would be like someone's life story. If you wrote down all the stuff that's been happening to you lately, 28 pages. This happened to me. This happened to me. I've got $1 in my bank account. My cousin Frank. You wouldn't believe it. But eventually, if you wanted to shorten it down, it could read just "I am love." Good luck with that, believing it. Did you catch a little bit of Sage? Did I snub it out too soon?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Good. Okay. Well, Paul Sugar, Scottsdale, Arizona, stressbeaters.com. In the fine print of the video, people can find your details and so on. Please consider a mindfulness class with them. I've had the honor of interacting with Paul for quite some time now, and I'm super thankful for each moment and for his perspective. He's steady Eddie. Rock of Gibraltar is what I got. And I told him just before the show. So I thanked him profusely before the show. I'm thanking him in advance for his April appearance on the Mind Body Spirit panel. Please go ahead and check out the Coast to Coast AM appearance and the Jeff Mara podcast. Jeff and Mara actually live like 3 miles away from me here in San Antonio. I was lucky enough to have a cup of coffee with them one time at the local Starbucks. What a wonderful show that is. Paul, last chance here. If you had to give us all a mantra, it could be a funny mantra. Think one of those 1970s movies or something like that. What's a final reminder? If we said it enough and we believed it enough and we said it from here, things might shift a little in our lives. And a mantra is a very special thing. It does exist as another way in to the big heart that we all are, collectively even.
Yeah.
What's the mantra you want to give us or leave us with?
Well, let's see. Why don't we say, I'm enjoying every breath that I take in this life
And every move you make.
and every move that you make.
Sting had something like that going on too. I like it. I like it. Well, Paul, thank you again for being on Angels Positivity and Love. We will see you again, hopefully in 2025.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me, Mike. You're doing a great service here.
Thank you.